For more on the president's Afghanistan strategy, Middle East expert and editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, is with me now. Good to see you.
See you.
You know, it's funny because, a lot of what the president said in that 12-minute address, we've heard all before.
Right.
And David Axelrod, a former senior advisor to President Obama, he tweeted this. Amazing how familiar all these arguments are after 16 years in Afghanistan. The arguments have stayed the same. And in many ways, it seems the strategy has stayed the same, right?
Well, the strategy has not stayed the same. The focus has shifted. Right. Obviously, we're dealing with the same country. We're dealing with the same terror groups. Some of them have grown and expanded and branched off, and now we have ISIS added to the list of terror groups. But we have an evolved terror strategy, which we have to kind of parallel now. And I think that a lot of the fight that we are fighting, particularly against ISIS and then Al-Qaeda and the groups that try to mimic what ISIS has done, is to take their strategy and put it online. And then you have recruitment efforts online. And a lot of our intelligence and our counterterrorism strategies have been forced to go online and to counter, to at least get some intel, rather than just stay and worry about troop numbers and worry about the ground battle. We talk about ISIS, for example, diminishing in Syria, in Iraq. We don't talk about where they're growing, in Libya, in Egypt, in the Sinai Peninsula, for example. We also don't talk about how they're growing online and on the dark web, on the web.
But none of that was addressed in this speech.
None of that was addressed in the speech, and a lot of it, as you said, it was repetitive. The fact that a terror organization can take over a political vacuum, that was from 1979 in Iran, right?
Yeah. So look, candidate Trump, obviously very much opposed to leaving troops in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Right.
This is what he said.
So we're on track now to spend, listen to this, $6 trillion. $6 trillion. Could have rebuilt our country twice. All together on wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and the Middle East. It's time to rebuild America.
It now seems the president is at least listening to the generals in the Oval Office, but the criticism is that this plan, which is in a big way a continuation of what's already been tried, is a continuation of a strategy which is all about losing less quickly.
Losing less quickly. That's because he's not giving a timeline. It kind of buys him all the time in the world, right? But I think that now he's saying our end goal is not to stay there and to rebuild the nation the way that we had, for example, in Iraq, and then handed it over on a silver platter and walked out. But I think the goal is to get rid of terrorists. And if that's our end goal, I think he is saying that we do take into consideration how much it's costing us, how many people we're sending over, the families. We have to answer to all these families. And as you said...
But other administrations were concerned about those issues as well. Surely.
Of course they were.
Which is why there was a timetable put on these operations.
Of course, but we didn't do anything in the 16 years. So I think that was the calculation. When Donald Trump sat around with his advisors, I think the question was, how can we justify this? When we've been there for 16 years, what are we going to do differently now to make this? And I think one of the main factors is to bring in the neighbors and to say, allies need to help us with everything across the board, meaning if we're helping you financially and you call yourself an ally of the United States, then we require reciprocity in that relationship.
We're looking at you, Pakistan, right? And Pakistan got called out specifically because of this.
Completely.
But again, previous administrations have taken the point of view that Pakistan needs to do more when it comes to fighting terrorism.
Words. There were words. There were words because the checks were still paid out to Pakistan, who continued on with their business. And the truth of the matter is that, like Donald Trump said, it behooves these countries to play along with the United States and our counterterrorism measures. Look at Europe, for example, and what they're dealing with right now. The United States will deal with that type of national security threat on that frequency, that attacks happening weekly, if we don't confront this, meaning we want to fight this where it's at and not to have it on our borders.
But just bringing back to Pakistan,
sure.
Pakistan has leverage here. If you want to supply troops, you want to send 4,000 more troops into Pakistan, into Afghanistan rather, you need Pakistan because all that supply comes through Karachi, it heads north, it then goes over the border into Afghanistan. Pakistan can close that down, and they've done that before. So this
they can close it down, but we could also say to Pakistan, you also have a terrorism problem. So this is the same thing that Donald Trump did with Saudi Arabia, for example. The parallel here is that Donald Trump is the CEO. He walks in and says, listen, you have a terrorism problem, we have a terrorism problem. This is how we propose to fix it. And I think that that's the shift in what the plan that he's putting out. Look, terrorism is not new, right? None of that, and the Middle East is not new. These are very old battles that we're fighting. It's just that the lens by which we look at the problem is now shifting a touch. We've always looked at the Middle East through a Western lens, and standing at the podium and saying pretty words is no longer going to serve us.
I just think that this is a president who is very much transactional. I do this, you do that, and we're good. Something like dealing with Afghanistan, it's more, it's 3D multi-phase chess, if you like.
Yes.
And of course, the question is, is this a strategy, and is this a president who is capable of dealing with all of that at once?
Right. Well, that's a wonderful point, and I think that what we saw today, and whether you're critical of the president or supportive of his measures, I think that it was quite nuanced in comparison to what he's done and said before. And I think that that's a direct reflection of the people that are surrounding him. I mean, we're talking about generals who've been on the field, and I think what he was trying to say today is that the realities on the ground are dictating and telling a very different story than what he perceived. And he said, my instinct was to pull out.
Yeah.
Why? Because 2 + 2 is 4. I'm a CEO. It's not, it's just bleeding money, and he doesn't believe in throwing good money after bad. And I think that in this case, he's truly being told a very different narrative, a very nuanced narrative, and that's what we hope to see, and to see a change in the strategy after 16 years of putting so much into this.
I still don't see this huge change that some have been talking about.
If you go to the Middle East and you see the realities, it's a very, very tall order for any administration to make significant changes.
We're out of time, Lisa, but on the upside, at least they got rid of Steve Bannon's plan for a private mercenary army to take over. Anyway, that was a good thing. That's not there.
I think so.
Lisa, thank you. Good to talk to you. Thank you.
You too.